Welcome back to Capitol View. Arkansas's lethal injection law survives to a state Supreme Court ruling, but the future of the death penalty in Arkansas isn't much clearer. Joining us to discuss that and more, Attorney General Leslie Rutledge. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Drew, for having me on. Glad to be here with you.
I appreciate it. So let's talk about the death penalty. One of the first things I wanted to ask you about, you recently praised the Arkansas Supreme Court's decision validating Arkansas's death penalty law. Why that praise?
Well, it means that executions can go forward in the state. The Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of the confidentiality clause, ensuring that those providers of the drugs necessary to carry out lethal injections may maintain their confidentiality, that we can move forward, and most importantly, give those families of the victims the closure that they need to ensure that justice is carried out. That's my job, Drew, is to ensure that justice is carried out. And that's why I was saying that this was a win, is because justice needs to be carried out for those families of those victims.
And you talked about justice for those families in the statement that you put out after the decision came down, but I wonder if we're really any closer to that decision. I know that you know that there's been a lot of problems with states acquiring the drugs used in lethal injection. At least one of the drugs that Arkansas plans to use has apparently expired. So I wonder if we're really any closer to justice for these families.
We are, because what the Supreme Court's ruling did was allow manufacturers, providers of these drugs to provide them to Arkansas and the Department of Correction. And so now the governor, the Department of Correction can obtain those drugs. We can move forward with those executions. And again, give those families of the victims the closure that they need.
The problem is, though, who are you going to get them from? That's the thing. You know, Arizona has the same secrecy laws as us. These Pfizer was kind of the last. There was a little bit of a loophole allowing the acquisition of the drugs through Pfizer, but it just doesn't seem like any of these pharmaceutical companies are going to provide them for the state.
Well, Drew, that's a question for the Department of Correction, for the governor. My job as Attorney General is to handle the litigation, and once that litigation is final, once those inmates who are on death row have exhausted all of their appeals, then I will provide those names to the governor, who will be, he will then set dates for executions.
I'm sure you know in the state law that spells out how the state will administer the death penalty, there is a second way. There's a 3-drug cocktail, but it also says, or a barbiturate. And I know that Texas has carried out, I think, a dozen executions already this year with a barbiturate. And I wonder, your Attorney General's office will be the one to defend that if the ADC moved to that. Would you support using that other option written in the legislation?
That too will also be a decision for the Department of Correction, for Governor Hutchinson, to determine whether or not that is the proper protocol. We will be advising them, should they decide to move away from this 3-drug cocktail that it is commonly referred to, but right now the governor has indicated that that is the plan that has been in place, and that we will move forward with that.
Does there ever become a time when, because of the legal hurdles that have to be jumped through, especially in today's day and age, to administer the death penalty, that bringing that up and fighting that litigation out surpasses the desire to get justice on that level to the family, where you could just say, we're going to lock this person up, throw away the key, and that, I've even spoken with some families that feel like that would be better at a certain point if we just can't do it.
Well, these are sentences that have been given to these individuals by juries. And these are sentences that should be carried out, and to see that justice is carried out, and to give these families closure.
Okay. Was talking a little bit, this is a criticism that you had of a Supreme Court ruling that recently came down, throwing out a Texas abortion law, placing restrictions on who can provide abortions, and also restrictions on the facilities that abortions are provided in. You said that the decision makes it even more challenging for a state to provide common sense health and safety regulations for abortion procedures. Was looking at some research into this, though, and I have some questions about how those concerns about women's health, and what I found, that major complications in abortions are rare, occurring less than 1/4% of the time, 1/4% of the time, about the same frequency as colonoscopies. Childbirth is much more risky for the mother. Would you advocate the same restrictions and requirements of medical professionals providing those procedures?
Yes, safety and well-being of women is the top priority, and no woman should want to go to a facility that doesn't have hospital-like standards and where their well-being and their health is not the top priority. So I would advocate, for across the board that a patient's health is the #1 priority of an individual providing that. This case, I could not disagree more with the outcome of this case by the U.S. Supreme Court, because I am pro-life. However, should a woman decide to have a legal abortion, it should be done in a facility with hospital-like standards, with admitting privileges, to where if something should happen, there are complications, but that woman would
Same thing with
receive
colonoscopies?
That woman should receive
These other procedures that happen all over the state on an everyday basis, you want to hold this, that in some cases are more dangerous than abortions. You want to hold those doctors and those medical professionals to the same standard?
Well, I have not looked into those specific areas because I am not a physician. I am the attorney for the state, and as such, defending the law here in Arkansas, but looking out for women's health, because, Drew, as a woman, I want to ensure that all women have that same top-notch health care, and they should receive that by these facilities. If they go in, they should receive top-notch health care and nothing but that.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that. Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, thanks so much for being